Good morning, Clear Creek. I want to welcome you to Sunday morning worship, or for some of you, what you thought was going to be Bible class. Time changed, and there's nothing in the world more fun than preaching to a sleep-deprived crowd. Thank you so far for everyone's participated, Paul and Jeremy. I just love Jeremy Womack. He's a great guy. And I that video reminded me, years ago I bought one of those simulation games where it's like a Sim City or something, and you were to create a character in there that looked like you. And once I created my character, I realized that he looked like Garth Brooks and Cliff Clavin had an overweight love child. And I decided I didn't want to play the game anymore. It was that bad. But anyway, welcome here. We're in the middle of a series that is going to take several parts as we talk about the culture of Clear Creek Church, entitled We Can't Stay Here. And last week, we discussed Matthew 17, as was referenced already by Paul, about how that Peter, James, and John went with Jesus on top of a mountain, and Jesus was transfigured with Moses and Elijah. Moses and Elijah are talking, but they're not the only ones. Peter decides he'll say something, and he says, Lord, it's good for us to be here. Let's build 3 tabernacles right here, and we'll build one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. And the message was, as great as mountaintop experiences are, you can't stay there. Clear Creek's a great place to be. Truth is, though, we can't stay just like we are, because in life, if you're not growing, you're dying. And we want Clear Creek to be a church that is growing. If you're not growing, you're dying. So over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about things that maybe we need to change our thoughts about that deal with the culture of Clear Creek. And today our lesson is entitled Empty Seats Are Serious Issues. Before we get into it, let's bow together in prayer. God, you're an amazing God, and we thank you for this morning. We thank you for this time together. And our prayer is that we'll understand that you've put a great responsibility on us as your children. It's great to be a part of your family, and being at a place like this at a time like this is an amazing opportunity. But it's also a great responsibility. May we take that seriously. We thank you for Jesus, for his sacrifice, because without him we can accomplish nothing. But with him we can do all things. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
Okay, hypothetical. There's this family driving down the street one particular Sunday in a white SUV. They stop at the top of a hill. The father sees a church and says, hey, let's go to church today. Mother agrees. Why not? What do we got to lose? The kid in the back turns down his iPod and recites a recent bumper sticker that he saw. Hey, I agree, there's nothing wrong with Jesus, he just got bad PR. The daughter, in a vogue attempt to act like she's from the 60s, throws up a peace sign and a school for the whole family. So, for the first time, on a particular Sunday, without being forced or coerced, this family goes to church. Then they drive into the parking lot. It's full. There's nowhere to park. They have to drive all the way around the church and then park about 15 miles up the street. Naturally, they're going to be about 10 minutes late, so they wonder, is it worth going at all? But they press on. Little do they know that they discover soon that by being 10 minutes late, they're actually 5 minutes early at this particular church, which makes them wonder about the convictions of the people. Anyway, they press on and they make it to the lobby of this big church, and they see all these people hurrying around trying to get to wherever they're trying to get to. And on this particular Sunday, this particular time, no one actually stops to say hi. No one takes notice that they're new, but wait. They press on, they're resilient, they're self-sufficient, they knock the doors open, walk into the auditorium, and it's the first time they see a congregation like this. They freeze, like a deer caught in a Hummer's headlights. It's confusing, like Neo's conversation with the architect, and like Neo, they have no idea what to do. They're at an impasse. I mean, what do they think? Where do they sit? I mean, the last thing this family wants to do is stumble over a bunch of people singing strange songs just to get to the middle of the aisle, to sit in some place that they don't even really want to be at. So, like many people, I figure, they just stand there in the aisle for about 5 minutes, uncomfortable. Finally, the wife tugs on the husband's hand and, well, they leave. And then, the next time they're driving by this church on a particular Sunday, they just keep driving by. Oh, thank goodness all that's just hypothetical.
It's Easter. Not any Easter. It's Easter here. A year ago, we had a record crowd of almost 1,100 people at Clear Creek. To let you know what that means there are only 860 chairs in this room So 1,100 people put people all over the building. We ask our congregation, we ask our church family, if you would, to move to some of the overflow areas so that our guests could have a seat in here and see the Easter drama that we put on pretty much every year. And so it's dark. The video's playing. People are still filing in because, as we all know, 10 minutes late is 5 minutes early. And I'm standing at the back. And if I'm talking about you, I want to let you know that I love you. You're important to me. I want to be in heaven with you someday. But there was a family who came in who's part of our family. They came in the back door, and the usher said, there are very few seats left. We want to keep them for our guests who are arriving late. And they demanded to be seated. Well, would you like to go to the overflow? We'll take you. No. I want to be in here. Church people are kind of funny about their seats, aren't they? God's people have always been a little weird. I like the aisle seat. I don't know about you. Usually I like to sit on the aisle because eventually I'm going to have to step out and come up here and talk to you folks. But sometimes we can be just a little bit weird about our seats and where we sit. Not long ago, I had one of those dude really moments. Have you ever had a dude really moment where something happens and you go, dude, really? I was in a theater. Lots of empty seats in the theater. Me, my wife, another couple from here at church. And we had sat down, we'd gone and found the perfect seat up high in the middle. But there were tons of seats in there, and I start noticing right before the movie starts, there's this family of 4 or 5 people. And they come in, of course, you're in the theater, you can see down in the front. They come in, they walk all the way around, all the way up, and they sit right by me. Not even a buffer seat. You know, guys at least leave a buffer seat. I mean, right by me. To which I'm thinking, dude, really? Of all the seats in here? And then I feel an elbow in my ribs. And it is Melissa, the Truth Davis. I didn't just think it, I said it. You ever had one of those moments? We're funny about our seats. I get on an airplane and pray that nobody will sit by me. I go to a theater and hope no one's going to take that chair next to mine. But God's people have been that way forever. In Luke chapter 7, Luke chapter 14, verses 7 through 8, there's a story about Jesus going to the house of Pharisees, and it says he began speaking a parable and to the invited guests when he noticed how they had been picking out the places of honor at the table, saying to them, when you're invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor. In verse 11 it says, for everyone exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. I mean, even back then, people who were God's people liked their choice seats. There's a guy named John Acuff who writes an article called Stuff Christians Like. And he said, when I go to a church and they ask me to scoot in the middle, it causes me to ask several questions, and I want to talk about these questions just a minute. It says, the first question is, does me scooting over reward bad behavior? I got here early. I got to the end of the aisle, and I've got it on lockdown. If I scoot, people who come late are going to be rewarded for their late behavior. Like a hamster receiving a delicious nut when it presses the lever, they associate lateness with a primo end of aisle seating, and that's perpetuating bad behavior. The next question he asks is this a boundaries moment? In the book Boundaries, Cloud and Townsend detail healthy boundaries we all need to draw in our lives when it comes to personal relationships and the way we let people treat us. Is there any way when someone comes to my aisle and tries to get me to slide over, can I just say, sorry dude, boundaries? And the last one is, can I re-scoot if no one comes? If I do scoot, I'm going to put my eyes on for this one. If I do scoot and no one comes, can I re-scoot or de-scoot, which is a new word, I guess, and claim my previously surrendered seat territory? Does that make someone I scooted next to in the middle feel smelly? It's not that they're smelly. They just might be wearing cool water cologne for all I know, but I like a little space between me and the next guy, that Baptist buffer, if you will. Can I re-scoot? Well, in any of these articles, people can write in, and I'm going to read you some of the responses. It's like you know me, but you don't know me. When asked to scoot, I'll admit I get a little agitated, especially in a small church where my seat is well known. Everyone knows where I sit on Sunday. It's my seat. Does that sound familiar to anybody? I will scoot and slide, but I'm never happy about it. By the way, her call name was Inner Sparkle. Maya Greco wrote, I never scoot. I'm like you, and I like the aisle, and that's why in the heck should I scoot to the cold seat next to me when I'm already in the one I warmed up? Rebecca says, I've never been to a church large enough to demand a scoot. How sad's that? I'll have to keep an eye out for that sort of thing should I decide to start attending a larger, more evangelistic church. Patrick wrote, I'm glad I've not been a seeking non-Christian and come to most of your churches. Because if I had to counter those attitudes about moving over so I could have a seat, I definitely would not come back and probably not go back to church at all. Refusing to move because it's your seat, please let me know what churches you attend, and I'll certainly make sure that none of my friends ever visit. That's sad. We have to be careful about the way we act and the way we treat others. That stuff's important. Because at Clear Creek Church, we do one thing, only one thing. Our job is to find people who don't know Jesus and bring them into a life-changing relationship with Jesus by connecting them to God and to each other. 75% of our culture is either unchurched, meaning they have never had a church home, or they are de-churched, meaning that they had a church home and we treated them badly, or something happened and they decided that they did not want to be a part of a church ever again. And it is our job, it is our mission by 2020 that we want to go out and we want to claim as many of those unchurched and de-churched people as possible. But in order to do that, what would happen if we really believed that were important? What would happen if we really believed that greater is in he that is in me than he that is in the world? And what would happen if we were really committed to doing just that? What would happen if we realized that when we come here, we're not in a theater and we're not on an airplane, but we're in God's house, and that he sees these seats differently than he does the seat in a theater? And that he sees these seats differently than he does those on an airplane. That these seats, this seat that I'm talking about right here, this empty seat, the one that's around you, he sees those seats as an opportunity. That every empty seat in this room is an opportunity that is being missed for someone to be here and to be influenced by the Spirit of God that roams his assembly. That these empty seats are serious issues, and they're left here as a reminder to all of us who sit and we see the orange that is in this room to realize that we need to cover that orange with people, because those people need to hear about Jesus. They need to hear about the influence he has in their life, the power that he has over death, and the eternity that he has waiting for us. What would happen if we took that seriously? You may not realize it. There's a lot of things that go on so that this can happen. There are people who volunteer their time to work in the parking lot. They volunteer their time in children's ministries. They greet you when you walk in the door. Paul Hadfield doesn't just get up on Sunday morning and decide what songs he's going to sing. He knows what songs he's going to sing today. He knew on Tuesday of this week. The praise team has been spending hours in rehearsing to help lead those songs so that we could worship God in spirit and truth. And the beauty of it is they make it look so seamless. They make it look so easy, but it's not. There's a lot of time spent and a lot of prayer spent in having that happen. Jeremy Womack knew what he was going to talk about this morning earlier in the week, a long time before he ever came here, because he was preparing himself to lead people in worship to God. And a sermon like I'm going to preach today usually takes 20 hours of my time during the week, of gathering information together, of prayer, of creating slides, of doing all the things that you see happening here. Those things happen. About 20 hours of my 40-hour or more week is dedicated just to doing what we do this morning. And then we do all that, and people still don't want folks to sit next to them. It's heartbreaking. It's a sacrifice worth making, but we make it because we're serious about the fact that we just do one thing. Most people will come in here, and the people they'll want to sit next to are their friends or maybe close family. They'll come in and they don't mind getting real close to someone they know well or someone that they're family with. I love to watch the young people. They'll come in and sometimes they'll pair off 2 by 2, and a boyfriend and girlfriend will sit there and they might actually hold hands or something like that, which is just, I think, is neat. You should hold hands in church if you know each other maybe. But I think that's great, to come in and to be close with one another. But I want to tell you something, and I want to put it up here and let you read it with me. And that's this: if the only people you care about are your family members and a few friends, you're further from God than you think you are. If the only people you care about are your family members and a few close friends, you're further from God than you think you are. Jesus put it this way in Luke chapter 6, verses 32 and 33. He says, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. You know, if all we care about are our friends and family members and those people who are close to us, and they're the only people we'll make sacrifices with, what's happening is that we're traveling further and further from God. It happens all the time. There are stories about it in Scripture. One of my favorite stories about it, I mentioned last week, teaching Bible to middle school boys. I taught the book of Judges, and there's a story in Judges about a man named Samson. And we probably are familiar with the story of Samson. Samson was incredibly strong. And he was born to a woman who was previously barren, and she was told that she could have him follow the Nazirite vow for his life. And basically the Nazirite vow was a very strict way of living a Jewish life. And what Nazirites did, there were several things they did, but they really defined more about what they didn't do. They didn't drink alcohol, they didn't touch dead things, and they didn't cut their hair. And so we know that Samson, his strength was based in this vow, but he continued to toy with God by stepping over the line of his vow. We know that he wasn't supposed to touch dead things, but he went to war with the Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey that was freshly dead. He had touched a dead thing. And we know that he had entered into a relationship with women who were outside of the Jewish nation. His first wife was a Philistine. Then he fell in love with this woman named Delilah. You know, hey there, Delilah. And then we find out that Delilah is trying to find out what's the cause of his strength, because she wants to subdue him because her people were terribly afraid of him. And so he starts playing games with her. He tells her, tie me up with cords. That'll take my strength. And so she ties him up with cords, and he just breaks the cords when the Philistines are upon him. Oh, you have to tie me up with new cords. Those were old. So she ties him up with the old cords or the new cords, and then she yells, the Philistines are upon him, and they melt like butter off of him. And then finally she wears him down. He said, my strength's in my hair. And so while he's asleep, she cuts off the 7 locks of his hair. And then she ties him. In Judges chapter 16, verse 20, we find that it says, he awoke from his sleep. He thought, I'll go out as before and shake myself free. And then look at what I've got highlighted in yellow. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. You know, when we get to this point where we're further from God than we think, we're just caring about the people that we know or the people that are part of our family, and we don't realize that our job is to storm the gates of hell, to find those people who are trapped by the world and to bring them into a relationship with God. And we get further from God than we think. What happens is it doesn't happen all at once. It happens over a period of time, and before you know it, the Lord has left you, and you didn't even know it happened. This morning, I want us to realize that our job is to understand that an empty seat is a serious issue. That an empty seat is an opportunity for God to influence people in His presence. So why is an empty seat such an important and serious matter? Well, the rest of the Luke 14 story is a parable. And it starts in verse 16 and goes through verse 23. Let's read all that together. But he said to him, a man was given a big dinner, and he invited many. And at the dinner hour, he sent his slave to say to those who had been invited, come, for everything is ready now. But they all alike began to make excuses. The first one said to him, I have bought a piece of land, and I need to go out and look at it. Please consider me excused, as if you would buy land without ever looking at it. Another one said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm going to try them out. Please consider me excused. Another one said, I've married a wife, which is probably a good excuse, and for that reason, I cannot come. And the slave came back, reported this to the master. Then the head of the household became angry. And he said to the slave, go out at once into the streets and the lanes in the city and bring in here the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame, the broken people. And the slave said, Master, what you have commanded has been done, and still there's room. And the master said to the slave, go out into the highways and along the hedges and compel them to come in, so that my house may be filled. So that my house may be filled. Did I say so that my house may be filled? What God is saying here and what Jesus is sharing with these people is He's saying it is important to God that His house be filled. There's a lot of people who don't like a big crowd. They're not going to want to sit next to people, and they're not going to want to see this big crowd of people all the time. Well, I tell you, if you don't like crowds, you're not going to like heaven. Because we know in Revelation 7:9 that there's an image of heaven, and there was this number, this sea of people that no man could count. If you don't like lots of folks, you're not going to like it there. It's important to God that His house be full. You see, Jesus taught, the Bible teaches, and we believe that the church is God's plan for evangelism to this world. That it was the church, this group of called out people, you, me, that we are God's best shot, God's choice for how He would share His story and the story of salvation with a world that doesn't know about it. And He wants His house to be full. He doesn't care who you share it with. He doesn't care how often it gets shared and how many times it's been recycled. What He cares about is that His house be full. Are there going to be people that are like you? Well, He sent out to the blind, the lame, and to all those other people. Well, no, His house is supposed to be full. Like an island of misfit toys. His house is to be full. And for God, this is not a theater and it's not an airplane. This is His house. And an empty seat's a serious issue. So I want to ask you these things. Just some things to consider. As we look at empty seats and we think about filling these empty seats, let's realize, number one, that it is our job to fill the house. If you look at that parable and you look at that story, you realize that it was the servants that He sent out to bring people into the house. And who are the servants? It's Christians. It's you and I. It's our responsibility to not just pray and hope, but to realize that there are people in this world, Seriously, there are people in this world that only you will be able to reach. There are people in your life and in your little corner of the world that I could never touch. There are people in your life, in your little corner of the world, that nobody else in this room could touch, but you have that influence. And it's your responsibility to use that influence to bring them to Christ. And there's a lot of people in this room who are probably new converts. Maybe you just began your journey with Christ. Do you know you're the best evangelist in the room? You're going to think you're not. You're going to think, I'm so new at this, I don't think I can do this. But you know you're the best evangelist in the room? Because I'm going to bet you still know people who need to know Christ. I want you to ask yourself a question this morning. Just really think about it. Do you know anyone who's not a Christian? Do you have friends that are not a member of a church, who have no church home? I dare say there are a lot of people in this room that do not have any friends that don't have a church home. Shame on you. Because it is our responsibility to put ourselves in situations where we can find those people so that we can influence and impact them. Maybe you're someone like me who's 50-something years old and your children have already left home and maybe you need to go coach Little League football somewhere so you can meet some people who need to know Jesus. Maybe you're someone who has an interest in airplanes or you have an interest in books or whatever it is, and you need to go somewhere where you can come in contact with people who need to know Jesus. But if you don't know anyone that doesn't know Jesus, then shame on you, because it is your responsibility to fill the house. It is my responsibility to fill the house. And we should purposely, intentionally put ourselves in places where we can find those people. Because eventually that door is going to open. And we're going to be prepared to walk in. Second thing I want you to know is don't ruin what happens out there in here. And here's what I mean by that. You know, I told you that we spend a lot of time preparing for what happens in here, but there are also a lot of people who spend time out there, sharing their story with people. They do know those people who aren't Christians. They're bringing people into this assembly so that they can worship God with us and they can spend time being influenced by the Spirit of God as He roams this room this morning. And what they're doing out there is they're evangelizing for Christ, but don't ruin what they're doing out there by the way we act in here. By saying, I really don't want anybody to sit next to me. By acting as if these people really aren't welcome, with the attitude that, you know, it's okay for you to come to my church, but this is my church and this is my seat, and it's okay for you to be here, and I'm glad you're a guest, but you're at my place. It's God's house, and He wants it to be full. And I also want to challenge you. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sections in this room. You don't have to be appointed. I hereby empower you this morning, and I'm sure the elders will agree with this. I will hereby empower you to be the sheriff of your section. Meaning that while church is being assembled, you look for people you don't know and you beg them to come sit beside you. Do it. Give it a try. Find someone that you don't know, that you've never seen before. When they walk in the door, meet them at the door. Say, hey, you know what? Do you have a place to sit? Come sit with me. Oh, you'll freak them out. That's true. But just try it and see what happens. Make yourself the sheriff of your section. But whatever you do, don't ruin what's going on out there by the way you act in here. And the third thing, and most important thing, is that the harvest principle always applies. Clear Creek does one thing. We find people who don't know Jesus. We bring them into a life-changing relationship with Jesus by connecting them with God and one another. That's the harvest. That's bringing people into this family, into this church, into this group, the called out ones. And the harvest principle goes like this. You reap what you sow. You reap more than you sow. And you reap after you sow. But here's the biggest harvest principle that we never talk about. I grew up on a farm. We had acres of tobacco. before we ever went into the field to cut even one stalk of tobacco, before we ever went into the field to even look at what was there and what we were going to reap, there were weeks of preparation. Making sure your trailers were there, making sure your sticks were there, you had enough spikes, you had enough workers, you had all this stuff. There was lots of preparation that went on to harvest. The harvest principle applies, guys. Yeah, we reap what we sow. We reap more than we sow. We reap after we sow. But we need to understand that a harvest will never be a harvest if we don't prepare for the harvest to come. We need to be people who are carrying umbrellas. And what I mean by that is, if you expect it to rain, you will carry an umbrella. And if we expect God to grow this church, we're going to expect it to happen and prepare ourselves for that to happen. That's what this experiment about simultaneous church is all about. Do we have seats? Yeah. But there's going to come a day, if God continues to act, there's going to come a day where we're going to need more seats and we're going to have to figure out what to do with it. So why don't we try it now? Why don't we test it out? And maybe we'll test out some other things. You never know what's going to happen. But if we're going to have a harvest, we need to expect it to happen and we need to prepare for it to come. And that means preparing our hearts and our minds to realize that we can't mess up what's going on out there and here. It's our job to fill the house, and that a harvest is coming, so we better be prepared. It's my prayer that we as a church become so sensitive to God that when we see someone that needs to know Him, when we have someone who comes in our midst who needs to be connected, that we recognize it and we reach out to that person with compassion, with kindness. That we don't preach to them, we serve them. And we'll let them know that they're important because an empty seat is a serious issue. Let's pray together. God, we come before you this morning thankful. We're thankful for the people who are in this room this morning. We know that they're here because they wanted to be here, because they could have been anywhere they wanted to be. And many chose not to be here. Our prayer is that we take this seriously. That we realize that you have given us a responsibility to bring people into your family. To connect them with the saving power of your Son, Jesus. And Father, we know there's a lot of different ways to do it, but there's some people that only we as individuals can reach. And may we reach those people. Father, we know an empty seat's a serious issue. And we know that you want your house to be full. Our prayer is that you'll use us to do that very thing. And it's in the name of your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen.